Well, I was born in 1941, Flint, Michigan. Um, my parents, my dad was an immigrant, came over in about 1917, 1918. The war was going on, and he's from Nazareth, as was my mother. And he was about 16 or 17 when he came over. And his family said, you have to, maybe it was a little bit before actually, 1914, 15. Turkey and the Ottoman Empire were the controlling country at the time for all of that area. And they were recruiting all the Arab boys to go into the army. And so the family said, you're going to be conscripted, and so you need to leave. So they put him on a boat and came to this country. And when he arrived, he discovered that if he joined the U.S. Army, he could get his citizenship faster. And so his family had a livery service, stagecoach service in the old country, and so he knew horses. So they put him in the U.S. Army Cavalry. We have pictures of him in look like the Canadian Mounted Police uniform, and that was entry into this country. Anyway, so after several years of establishing himself here, he went back and married my mother, and so they established residence here, in the 20s, and Nazareth, Palestine. Yeah, and they were cousins. So it was an arranged marriage, 13 years difference between the two of them. So anyway, and she came right out of high school. So and neither of them had knew English, and so it was. I don't know how they managed, but they managed. The survival skills are incredible with that immigrant generation. Anyway. So my dad had several businesses, but eventually opened a grocery store in downtown Flint called Citizens Market. And over the years, they lived in town, surrounded by other Arab families, the Farahs and the Corys. They all came over about the same time. And eventually my dad wanted a farm. And so he bought some property out on Corona Road, 160 acres. And that's where because I never lived in town, I lived on this farm. And so that's where I really grew up. The farm now has been sold, most of the acreage, and that's where Sam's and Walmart and, that whole development occurred. But that's where I grew up. Went to school in town at St. Matthew's Catholic School, 12 years, with the IHM nuns and the Augustinian priests. And then went to Mary Grove College in Detroit, which was a Catholic liberal arts women's school. Graduated in 1963. Went to graduate school at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. Studied international law and international relations with a specialty on the Middle East. From there, I was recruited for the Central Intelligence Agency. Because they were interested in my Middle East background and knowledge. So I worked for the CIA in Washington for about from the mid-'60s to the first part of the '70s. Then I decided that I really needed to do some more traveling. So I took a year and traveled to Lebanon, where I had family. Most of the family that in 1948 left Nazareth and Haifa and moved to Beirut. And so we had a large family in Beirut. So I lived with them for a year and did some more graduate work at the American University of Beirut. So then I came home and took a short temporary job with the Genesee County Parks and Rec Commission. They were just establishing a bicentennial project for the county called the Historical Crossroads Village. And they needed somebody who knew something about American history. I had studied American history. And so I helped them curate. I had very little knowledge about antiques, but We had good staff. So, and we programmed the various historic buildings that we brought out there, and I trained the staff. It was interpretive staff, and so I stayed there for a couple of years, and then eventually was hired by the C.S. Mott Foundation in 1978, and I was there for 33 years. So that's where I retired.
Where throughout your journey did you sort of come with this passion for documenting and telling stories, and specifically within like the Arab and the MENA community?
I think I came to it late. And I don't know that it was a direct route. And I quite honestly, I don't know how I got there.
Mm-hmm.
I just took advantage of various opportunities, and I learned a lot along the way. I was still am curious about people and where they come from and what their customs are, and I love travel, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to do enough personal travel and business travel with the foundation because I handled their international grant program for a while. And so it was just, if you're curious and people are fascinating, and there's so much common thread, whatever culture you're enacting with. And it just evolved, this interest, and it's become stronger over the years. Interestingly enough, when we were growing up, my generation and the generation before that, because we had immigrant parents, their focus was entirely on assimilation. Right or wrong, I'm not sure, but they were just so happy to be in this country and have the opportunities. They wanted to fit in. They wanted to belong. And so I think we inherited that, at least my generation inherited that sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, the next generations coming down the road, it seems to me were much more interested in going back to their roots. And not that I wasn't interested in my roots, but that was not the primary focus. And from the parents' viewpoint, it was, you're an American. I'm now an American citizen, proud of it. You're an American citizen, and this is where your loyalty is, and you need to do what you can to make this a better country. So, and you need to give back in whatever way you can. So, I mean, that's the generation now. I think it's very healthy now that the younger generation is interested in their roots and learning the language, perfecting the language, holding on dearly to the precious customs. I think that's all very good.
I mean, I want to obviously focus in on AHC, our American Heritage Council, where you've been a longtime board member and sort of helped contribute to expanding programming that's directly, addressing this, right? Creating opportunities for young people to come to terms with their identity, celebrate their culture, participate in advocacy, all of these different things. But I guess I'm curious, in your experience, right? Was it during your traveling that you sort of grew this interest and passion, or was it through your collegiate years when you were studying Middle Eastern history and things like that? Where did you sort of start to see this like need for you to tell stories and to get closer with your heritage and your identity?
I think it was after college.
Okay.
Yeah. And the more I studied Middle Eastern history, and really got into it, and the work that I was doing at the agency was extremely helpful because I concentrated and focused on various countries. I was concentrating not on the political side, but on the economic side and the analysis. But I mean, that gives you a lot of information about the culture and what works. And I, at one point, followed the oil production across the whole Middle East and North Africa. So it tells you a lot about the people and how they make a living and the challenges and the rest of that. So that was eye-opening for me. When I got to the Mott Foundation, we were not doing any work in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But they were beginning to look at opportunities internationally in Central Eastern Europe. That was a time when, in South Africa, Apartheid had been demolished to some degree, and we started making grants in South Africa. You remember Mandela was the new president. And then Central Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union opened up in the late 80s and early 90s. And so that was where I focused. I didn't come with any background, particularly on that region of the world, but I learned a lot. And there was a lot of things that were transferable from what I knew in the Middle East. These are all developing countries of one sort or another. So anyway, I learned about the struggles and the challenges of the Central Eastern Europeans coming out of communism and desiring for some sort of democratic institutions and some free market economies. So those are all stories that of people struggling and trying to survive and accommodate change, and how they managed to do it.
So you come back to Flint and you start working at the C.S. Mott Foundation, and you're there for 30 plus years. What was your pathway then to the Arab American Heritage Council?
I started on the board at the International Institute, and the board was made up of representatives of various ethnic groups, and Tony Mansour was also involved, and Sylvia Safaya was there as a director, very active Arab American, and Vicky Farah started out working on immigration-related programs with Sylvia. It was a very small staff. And then Vicky went on to become an immigration attorney in Ann Arbor. Anyway, that's where we started. And then at a certain point, and that institute had been going a long time. I remember my parents being involved, not on the board, but it was a gathering place for the immigrant coming through, and not just Arabs, but the other immigrants from Central Eastern Europe and elsewhere, all landing here in Flint, basically to work in the automotive industry, much like Dearborn.
Right.
Anyway, so, but at a certain point, I think those ethnic groups grew and they wanted their own centers. So the Institute collapsed in a sense, and places like the Sons of Italy gathered, and they had their own center out on Corona Road, and the Croatians and the Serbs had their own place, and at a certain point, the Arabs developed a little center, and it was called the Heritage Council. So Tony was involved in the International Institute. In fact, he had his little library there for a while, and then we moved it over to the Heritage Council, and then eventually it's now over at the University of Michigan Archives,
right.
But in Flint. But I mean, that's how I was dragged into was dragged into the Heritage Council, and the members of the board were pretty much the first generations of the immigrant family. So there were the Mansours and the Coreys and the Farahs and several other folks that all came over about the same time.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved. It just evolved.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you throughout your journey, you talk about being on this journey of curiosity, right? And moving from job to job and continuing to sort of pursue passions and things. And, I want to believe that with the AHC, there's sort of this turning point for you in terms of like your involvement with the organization as it sort of grew and launched off the ground. You got more and more involved with the organization. What was that turning point that inspired you to be more part of this work?
Selfishly, I think it was part just a sense of belonging to people that looked like you and had the same customs. And, it just is a comfort level. And in addition to that, we found some needs in the community that we thought we could meet that nobody else was meeting. And those grew over a period of time. We started out as a volunteer organization. Mm-hmm. And I remember Carol Bohannon was the volunteer, and I know we had meetings periodically. I don't think they were really, that organized as we are now. And we did some things culturally, which was nice, and it was an opportunity for the Arab American community, local community, to stay engaged with each other. And it sort of grew from there as the community became larger. More and more immigrants were coming over as a result of whatever war was going on in the Middle East at any given time. And there were just more immediate needs that needed to be taken care of. So that's how it grew.
Did you find that the AHC was becoming this very unique organization that didn't exist before, like with you, when you were growing up, maybe?
Completely.
Yeah,
Completely. I mean, I don't think even the activities that we did and maybe inherited to some degree from the International Institute, primarily the immigration stuff. I don't remember the other programs from the International Institute. Although we had festivals periodically. Every ethnic group had their own festival, and we all supported each other's. But I don't remember a lot of programming. I think a lot of it was just gathering of the first generation, and the first generation had a special club called the Al Watan Club.
Mm-hmm.
My siblings belonged to that. I was a little younger, but they were active for years and years and years, and that all was kind of an offshoot of growing up together, a sense of belonging and feeling comfortable, and their parents, the immigrants, all knew each other, so it was just a extended family. And I still feel that way about the Heritage Council.
That it's
a sense of belonging, a comfort level, and an extended family.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you, I guess, during that time when you were coming on board and getting to know sort of the team and figuring out sort of what the mission and the vision of the organization was going to be, what was your goal at that time? What was your hope that you would, thinking long term, 10 years down the road, like what did you want the organization to ultimately become, and what did you want it to be known for?
I don't know that we were that focused.
Mm-hmm.
We know we wanted to keep the community intact. It was important. We knew that we could be of some help to the new folks coming through, just the Arab Americans. I don't know that we thought that much about helping immigrants beyond that, although I do think Sylvia Safaya, who was over at the International Institute, she was from the Gantus family, was much more broad in the effort that they made and the support for immigrants across the board. But I think just the chance to be comfortable with others of your culture, to hear the language spoken regularly, the ability to get together socially. I think for a while that was just important, just to stay connected.
Yeah.
And then as we became a little more mature and sophisticated, we realized that there were some needs out there from the new folks coming over from the old country, that we could help out. Maybe they weren't being met by some of the social service agencies in the county, or maybe they just needed some nudging and they needed some direction of where to go. And sometimes it was a language issue. So that's the key for us, was to remain alert and to understand what the needs were and what the challenges were. And if we felt that we could somehow manage to provide some services, we were going to do it.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we had enough support from enough of the key families, the financial support, to be able to bring on a regular staff, a paid staff, and establish some programs. And then eventually most of the money was membership fees. And then eventually we got more sophisticated and realized there's some grant money out there. And so you know how that goes.
Right.
I mean, you're spending a lot of time writing grant proposals.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how we matured.
Yeah. You mentioned cultural preservation, obviously being one of the main focuses and goals at the time. And I want you to obviously talk about the storytelling, the first storytelling project of the organization, which ultimately led to the book, Our Pioneers from Oloton, being published. I recently was visiting the University of Michigan Flint and got to check out their archives and see some of the oral histories that were collected by Tony and Hanny Boardi. And I remember reading the transcript for one of those interviews. I learned that during the sit-down strikes at GM, that Hamady Bros donated a lot of food to the strikers.
And so did my dad.
Yeah, to support that. So like, I feel like, those stories, that oral history is so important, and something that, obviously with a podcast like Wajud, we're trying to help tell those stories again because we feel that they've been lost. And so I guess my question here to you is, what was it like to work on that first project? And, given your history and your interest in oral history and storytelling and even just your educational background, what did you hope to bring to that project?
Just a richness and a depth. And I'm just recalling now, we started an oral history project at the Crossroads Village. And it was kind of new. I remember reading books on how to do oral history. And I just remembered that. And I guess, I learned enough there to be able to help with the oral history at the Heritage Council. But it's just a richness and a depth of people's lives. And the more you get into it, the more you realize the challenges were common, whether they were Arab American or wherever they came from, even those that came from the South to work in the factories, and how they survived was always fascinating to me, and how they made it. And in some cases, as with my parents, and I'm sure this is the case elsewhere, there was no place to go back to. So your options are pretty limited. You're going to make it here in this country, in this job, wherever, and you're going to do the best you can, because there's no going back. The opportunity was here, and we're going to take advantage of it, and that's what happened. That's the success.
Yeah. Was it difficult to get people to tell their stories at the time?
I don't think it was a real problem. I think he had access, and for the most part, people were willing to, at a certain point, in an age 50 or 60, you've had time to reflect, and you're probably at the high point of your career, whatever it was, whether you're running a business or, providing some service or whatever. And so, I think they were anxious to relay their history a little bit and what was important, and probably giving credit to those that helped them along the way. So I don't think it was I don't think we were very sure to try and get people who are much older, and at a certain point, some of those folks couldn't remember very much. So those interviews were not as rich as we had hoped. But for the most part, I think we, and Tony had a gift for just letting them talk about themselves without, and a lot of things surfaced.
So you've had a front row seat to the growth of the organization over the years, and you've served in different capacities. I guess tell us a little bit more about the different roles that you've had within the organization.
I was president for a while, and then just on the board. Yeah, various positions on the board.
So you've served as president, you've been a board member, you've had a front row seat on the ways in which the organization has grown and evolved over the years. what have been sort of your favorite things, memories, accomplishments about this growth that the organization has had over the course of the last years?
I think within the last 20 years, they've made amazing progress. It just jumped forward in major ways, and I think that's because we had a professional staff, and they've had the resources through funders to do some interesting things and to develop some really pertinent programs that were meeting some critical needs. And so that has just been marvelous. And we just keep going and going and going. And now I'm really pleased to see the amount of young people involved and unusual things like the youth philanthropy program that's coming on board, and your leadership team that's doing some interesting things. And the outreach has just been expansive. So the work we're doing in collaboration with FIA sometimes and the Arab film festivals, and the work we're doing with the National Museum in Dearborn, the Arab American National Museum, and the other additional work that we're doing, and we're linking up with other maturing Arab American organizations, which I think is really healthy.
Yeah. Do you think that when you and Tony and maybe the rest of the team were thinking about the future of the organization, could you have ever imagined the AHC being what it is today?
No, I think we got from one year to the other, and we were still alive, and we still had resources, and I think that was just and we still seem to be meeting some needs, and we still had active membership. I think that was fine, I don't know that we had any really aggressive plans. I think we just sort of moved along, and growth occurred, and so here we are. I mean, a major community organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of ways that you're maybe not giving yourself enough credit for that growth and for the accomplishments that the organization has had.
We had a lot of good people, and resilience that I think is characteristic of the organization. I mean, because we've gone through some really tough political times.
Right.
I was thinking about 9/11 and the challenges that came from that, and the anti-Arab, anti-Muslim sentiment. And we got through that somehow. A lot having to do with the support we had from the quiet support we had from the community, which was amazing to me, because it was scary times for a lot of the members who were, there were threats if you had an Arabic-sounding name. Not a lot of them, but enough to scare the community. And somehow we got through that and came out stronger at the other end. I remember feeling such a level of support that I had never thought about before. I was at the foundation at the time, and Bill White, who was the president, said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing all right. This is a scary time for anybody that happens to be Muslim or has an Arab name." And he said, "Is there anything we should be doing to help the local community?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Can you arrange to have some of the leaders in your community, including the Muslim people from the mosque, come and meet with me?" Out of the blue, and I said, "Sure." And so we set it up late in the afternoon at one of the boardrooms at the Mott Foundation. I brought in Syrian bread, Lebanese, olives, the whole thing, the maza. Yeah, and we just sat around the table, and it was Bill and a couple of the board members of the Mott Foundation, and I would say maybe 6 or 7 of the leaders in the community. And it was just heartening to be able to sit down and have somebody like Bill listen and be interested enough to want to help in any way that he could. And I think we made a couple of grants to the Islamic Center. I can't remember what it was for, but I felt a sense of like a soft umbrella that sort of came over. Was very comforting and just soothing to know that the community cared, the non-Arab community cared. And I think a lot of it had to do because members in the community were so respected. They'd been here a long time. They had been good citizens. The Heritage Council was respected and was seen as a valuable asset in the community. So that was a remarkable, very satisfying feeling.
Did you find that the AAHC changed at that point? Do you feel like its mission changed? Did you feel like the objectives and the work sort of pivoted in a different direction?
I think we became much more involved in advocacy.
Okay.
For good reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably true of Access in Detroit. And we have kind of we've had for a long time a sister relationship with Access, and they've been very helpful to us as a smaller nonprofit. But I think the advocacy programs really germinated from 9/11 and the fallout from that.
Did you find that people were at the time nervous about being more advocates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're out there.
Yeah.
You're out there now. You can't. There's no place to hide.
What kind of role do you think the AAHC played in making people feel more comfortable or more empowered to participate and activate?
I think just realizing there are more of us, and you've got a community behind you, and we're all concerned, and we're going to do whatever is possible to make sure that we are treated in a respectful way, and that we are not terrorists. So that's and there, the scary tactics and the people that were threatening were few and far between, but it was enough. It was enough to put you on edge.
When I first started with the organization as executive director, I remember doing an interview where I said that one of my major goals for the organization was to help build the political power of our community. Right. And I remember getting some feedback from people of like, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. You should be weary about how you phrase things and about saying something like building the political power of the Arab and MENA community." And I remember feeling like, really questioning that, really wanting to push back against it. Because having, grown up with the organization in a lot of ways and having served in a, variety of capacities at that point, I sort of knew that young people were like yearning for a space like that, yearning for a platform for them to make their voices heard and so that they could contribute to political spaces. And so I guess I'm curious, having been able to sort of witness this like throughout history over this period of time, how have you been able to sort of respond to those things within the community, respond to that hesitancy, respond to that fear among community members?
I don't think the current generation and the generation before is a problem. I think activism, the whole interest in getting back to your roots, and that has given you certain amount of strength. And there's no pressure from your immigrant parents to say you have to acclimate. So don't stand out, just merge. Okay. And, that sentiment, I think, has gone by the wayside. And it's not just the Arab Americans. I think it's every ethnic group that is, the newer generations are feeling much more, powerful in standing up for who they are and and meeting the challenges. So I don't that so it's a generational. I think it's a generational thing that has altered. But I have to say that I remember my brother Ted, who was a state legislator for one term, and he was active at the state level. He was active in the Democratic Party. Tony, my cousin, was active in the Republican Party. So we were covering all the bases. And I remember that the activism and the advocacy started before your generation and the generation before that. It started in my brother Ted's generation. And Nicola, I can't remember his first name, was a lawyer. Both he and Ted and others in the state had formed an Arab group, an Arab American group within the state Democratic Party. So they were out there first and foremost, which I think is amazing at the time.
Yeah.
So I think we just sort of grown from that, and the advocacy, has just germinated and just blossomed.
Yeah. I mean, I think you make a really important point. Prior to my generation, there have been, so many incredible community leaders and activists and such incredible organizing in the Arab American community that has sort of brought us to this point, right, in our own history.
But I don't think it was easy for maybe it's John Nicola. I can't remember. I want to do justice to the Nicola family, but I don't think it was easy for them because they were sort of the first ones out there claiming their Arabness and also claiming their Democratic Party affiliation, and the fact that that was important.
Yeah, thinking of today, right, with the current political landscape, right, we're seeing more bigotry and xenophobia and anti-Arab and anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant rhetoric resurface again. And obviously these are battles that the AHC has fought before, and we're in a position now to be fighting them again. I guess knowing all of these things,
but we're much more savvy in the way we're doing it now.
Well,
I think we've learned.
That's, I guess, my question to you is, like, what makes us more prepared now? What do you think? Where do you think our focus should be in this time right now as we prepare to fight these battles again?
I think you just have to keep mushing along, and learn as you go. And some things are going to be impactful, and some things are not. But you learn. And you learn from the African American community that has been there and done this again and again and again, and other ethnic groups that even the Jewish community that has over the years had to fight anti-Semitism in waves, and you learn what you have to do, and how do you have to meet that challenge?
You mentioned being very proud of the young people coming through the organization. I guess, what message do you have for them in terms of participating in this advocacy?
First, listen to what's out there and where the prejudices are, so that you can target them. Some of them don't make a whole lot of sense. And some maybe, make some sense in terms of how you can meet that challenge. I just think you need to be open and curious again about what it is that people are finding so offensive, and finding a common thread.
Yeah,
that's critical, and that's hard. And I learned this in the grant work that we were doing, particularly in Central Eastern Europe. You're talking about changing people's attitudes and behavior, and that's a tedious piece of work to do, and it's 2 steps forward and 1.5 steps back, and you're lucky if it doesn't go all the way back. So it's just, we've seen this flow now, in this country of from 9/11, and then we had an ebb and up and down, and now it's come back with anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant, and it just you just have to keep at it. It's a lifelong it's a lifelong challenge.
Yeah. And I guess a fear for me is that a lot of people, especially with what we're seeing in the news now, with Palestinian protesters being arrested for their activism, right?
Yeah, right.
My fear now is that members of our community are going to be fearful about their activism, fearful about going out into the streets and protesting, and making their voice heard.
Right.
I feel the AHC has a role to play in helping to continue to empower our community, not just our young people, everyone, right? To continue to be in community with each other and continue to make their voices heard. How do we do that in a time like this?
You've got to have people understand, and this goes back to something I've been thinking about for a long time. In between graduate schools, I taught American history, high school, and tried to teach civics, although most schools at that time didn't have civics, and they still don't have civics. And this situation, I think, goes all the way back to the time when our high school kids do not know citizens' rights and they don't know citizens' responsibilities. And for me, that is key. And it's been that knowledge and that focus has been accelerated through all the work I've done, the grant work I've done for the Mott Foundation in Central Eastern Europe, because that work was supporting democracy building, rule of law, trial by jury, parliamentary representative government. Okay, those people, and I think we're in a situation in this country now where people are just now beginning to realize what their rights are because they're being taken away. But they also need to realize there's some responsibilities with citizenship. It's not all taking the rights. You have to become involved, and in whatever small way you can, even at the community level, to make sure those rights are secure. And that's part of your responsibility. You have to give back, and you have to be involved to benefit that community. And I'm not sure, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not sure that we have a generation that understands that. I know that they're out protesting, and I give them credit for doing that. And I hope I see more of that. But I hope it's not a situation where they say, "What am I going to do? I'm without any sort of resources. How do I fight this? I know my rights are being damaged. They're being taken from me. What am I supposed to do? Just let that happen? Yeah. No, you have a responsibility for you and for the rest of your fellow citizens to start working on securing those rights again. That's all part of the deal.
Yeah.
I hope, I don't know, maybe we have to get to a more desperate situation, although I can't see how much more desperate we can get. But we are in, I hate that term, but unprecedented. We are in unprecedented times. And so I don't know what's going to take but slowly I'm seeing people at the various town halls, as I watch television, the news, they're finally reacting. But look how far we've had to come for them to finally get off their seats and begin to say, this is not right. Yeah. I have a responsibility to stand up and say so and make some changes. I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to be out there trying to make some social changes. Not just for me, but for my community. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I wish them well.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, because they're going to have to save the country.
We talked a lot about the ways that the AHC has had significant growth over the course of the last 2 decades, right? I would argue that that growth is due to, in large part, young people coming through our doors and supporting our programming and helping to drive it forward. We launched our first advocacy and civic engagement program, first time that we've had an established program identified as advocacy and civic engagement. And the last couple years, it has grown significantly. And I can honestly say, having served in the executive director role now, that it was young people that drove that program forward, that helped get it to where it's at today.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do see a lot of hope in the younger generation.
And it's not just the American youth.
Yeah.
It's, if you look at the Ukrainians and you look at the folks in the Middle East, who are the ones that are out protesting? That's all young people.
Yeah.
Yeah. The old folks are tired. And in some cases, in places like the Middle East and Ukraine, they've been battling at it for a long time. So they saying, okay, to the young, you've got the energy, we'll support you. Do it.
But I would argue that there's still a role to be played for.
Yeah, we can. I mean, sometimes we can provide a little wisdom.
A lot of wisdom.
Having experienced some of this before, I mean, we've seen the pendulum go back and forth, back and forth. And if nothing else, we can provide a sense of hope.
Absolutely.
Understand that this is not forever, and things will get better. You just have to keep working at it.
Yeah.
Just keep working at it.
Absolutely.
And it starts at the grassroots. If I've learned anything from the Mott Foundation, their niche has always been working at the community level, whether it's community education or community organizing or the whole range. And it all starts from the bottom up. And I think that's what you're going to see now with the current political environment. If we're going to have change in this country, it's going to be at the town hall level. And people are going to be upset enough to organize and say to their federal legislators and their state legislators, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. You need to change. We didn't put you in a position. We didn't elect you to do this. It's not top down.
Right.
It is bottom up. That's where social change occurs. That's where people's behavior change. That's where enlightenment occurs.
And you've been a part of this for so long now. And you've come in and out. I know that you've stepped down from the board position a couple times, and then you've come back. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you connected to the organization that keeps you wanting to come back?
I think they're doing impactful work, and I like to be on a success wagon, and it's worthwhile. So that's how I want to spend my time.
Absolutely,
as a volunteer, or whatever way I can. Sometimes it's treasure, sometimes it's time, sometimes it's both.
Wearing all the hats, as usual.
Well, there's, as you get a little older, you don't have the energy level. So sometimes it has to be, I'll share some of my treasure, but I don't have so much time I can give you. Yeah. But, whatever. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, speaking of treasure, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who is starting off in community leadership role, what would be the advice you would give them?
I can't limit it to one. I told you I was going to be wordy. First of all, I think anybody that's in the nonprofit service-oriented business has to listen. And I would say listen to your constituents. They will tell you what the needs are, and they may even be able to help you form some resolution to whatever issue or problem has to be. So that's the first thing. The second is to be very open and humble about what you're doing. And another thing I would say is I think you need to be conscious that you're going to have some failures, but don't fear the failures. You learn from those, and sometimes you learn more from the failures than you do your successes. So, and be willing to take some risks. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
That's really important.
And God bless you.
Yeah. Jeanette, looking forward, what's your hope for the future of the Arab American Heritage Council?
Just to continue to do the good work they're doing now, and to be open, continue to do the outreach that we are with the community, understanding that the challenges are beyond just the Arab American community, that we have a role to play in meeting the challenges of the broader community. And where we can, I think we need to do that. That keeps us relevant. And I admire the resiliency, and I think that's going to be ongoing with the new generation of leadership. And just continue to listen to where the challenges and the needs are, and the best of our ability to find the resources and do the programming to meet those needs.
Yeah.
I think we have a good future.
I agree. And I want to thank you. I feel like, since starting with the organization 6-7 years ago, I have been able to work closely with you and learn so much from you. And I'm so grateful for the guidance that you've offered me, or even just giving me general feedback on how to do the work well and intentionally and in a meaningful way for our community. I'm so grateful for that.
Well, I have to tell you also that I am grateful in many ways, because my affiliation with the Heritage Council taught me how nonprofits work. And that enhanced my ability to make good grants to the nonprofits in this country and overseas when I was at the Mott Foundation. Because I know firsthand all the challenges, whether it's fundraising or programmatic or planning and the rest of it. I saw firsthand, and I continue to see it. That also, as that knowledge has enhanced my contribution, whatever it has been, when I serve on the board of the Center for Arab American Philanthropy. Because I now know philanthropy, and I know how nonprofits that they are supporting work, and the needs and the challenges they're facing. And it has helped me with serving on the board of the Arab American National Museum, because I see all sorts of areas that can be interconnected, interrelated, that can benefit a whole range of work that both the Heritage Council is doing and a national organization. So I have learned so much from just my affiliation, and observing and listening and seeing how this council has worked and how it's grown and how it's matured.
Yeah. And you continue to bring those insights into our board meetings,
but that has helped me become a much better board member, whether it's been for the Arab American organizations I belong to, and I'm on the board of a couple of other nonprofits, non-Arab. But I've learned all that from watching the leadership and watching the operations of the Heritage Council. So I'm still learning. Still learning.
We always are, right?
We are not a finished product.
Yeah.
Until we're dead.
Yeah.
And so, that's the volunteer work that I do is just really satisfying. And I'm still curious, and I look for opportunities where I can continue to learn.
Always on that
journey.
And
the council provides that for me.
Always on that journey of curiosity.
Yes.
Any final words?
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to expound.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you.